Tom, thanks so much for coming today and letting us talk with you. Tell us a little bit about this place where we're sitting right now.
We're sitting in Epson Oaks, and what's cool about this place is it was for sale, and if it would have been bought by a developer or even a business, if you look at all these grand oak trees that are hundreds of years old, they could have took every one of them down. And as Berkeley County grows, we have to preserve places like this. So the county come in and spent $600,000. We spent $600,000. No taxpayer money. It was all ARPA funding for us and Greenbelt for them, and we purchased it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a historical park. So imagine every revolutionary battle in Berkeley County will be represented. You'll walk up to it with your phone, you'll scan it, it'll tell you a little bit about the history of it. So we're envisioning school field trips, we'll have picnic tables, we'll have a walking trail. So, you know, 5 acres in the heart of Moncks Corner, to be able to take it off the commercial market and make it something for everybody. It's one of my favorite things I've done so far. And another cool fact is my mother-in-law, Helen, she's going to turn 98 this month.
Wow.
She lived on this property in the early 1940s. They rented a house here. And through the years, this property has been rental houses, mobile home parks, just all kind of things. So for us to be able to do that, and I give a lot of credit to Johnny Cribb and Berkeley County Council, they really stepped up to do something really neat in the town of Moncks Corner.
Yeah. All right. So what inspired you to run for mayor of Moncks Corner?
Well, I have a little backstory on that, because we lived in Moss Grove, which is off Highway 52. We wasn't even in the town. And we lived there from 2006 until we sold in 2019. Well, in 2019, I had a stroke. So I was at work, and I used to get migraines. And I thought I was having a migraine, so I didn't take it real serious. I just had a flash of light. So I went to our nurse, and they put me in a dark room for a while, and I said, well, I'm going to drive home. So I drove home, and I got home, and I just wasn't feeling right. And I told the wife, I said, I think we need to go to the emergency room. And for me to say that, she knew, okay, I'm not feeling good. So anyway, we went to the new Roper Berkeley, and they asked for my driver's license. And I'm just looking blankly into my wallet, and they asked my address, and I gave them something that wasn't close to my address. So they knew they had a problem. So anyway, I went in on a Thursday. On the Monday, I had surgery. They had to open me up. I had 3 brain bleeds from where it broke loose. So it was a touchy situation. But I decided I didn't want to live on a postage stamp anymore. You know, I wanted to get somewhere with a little more land. And we had just renovated our house in Moss Grove, because we'd bought first phase, and we didn't have the hardwoods, and we did all that. So when I told my wife, of course, she just looked at me like I done lost my mind. But she said, let me think about it. And I told her why. And she come back and said, start looking. So I started looking in Moncks Corner. And the older houses have smaller rooms and all, and nothing really fit. And I found a lot. And it was across from St. John's Christian School, right on Main Street, Moncks Corner. And I thought it was commercial. And I looked it up, and it was residential. Everything fell into line, the price was good, and we bought it. And we got to design our forever last home. Well, while we're in town, COVID hit. And you couldn't go a lot of places. So my grandkids, we would walk to Lacey Park, because it's right down the road from my house. And they had these 2 slides, and they was duct taped, and they was already broke loose. And I'm thinking, man, kids can cut themselves and hurt themselves on these. So I reached out to the town, and the response I got just wasn't warm and fuzzy. And I had to keep going back and forth almost 6 months to get those replaced. So the next summer, we're going down to the park, and they have a big, like, I call it a tornado slide. And it had a hole in it. And it had already been patched once, and it had a hole in it. And I'm thinking, you know you had a problem. So anyway, I reached out to the town, and it was just, I was like, they didn't want to listen. So I put it on the Berkeley County Growth page, and a reporter said, hey, can we come do a story? I'm like, sure. So we did the story, and people seem to get behind it, that, you know, they need to work for you. And what was funny was the excuse was, well, supply chain, because of COVID, within a couple of days that slide was repaired. So, you know, could have got it done. That's my thing. So I told the wife, I was like, you know, I'm thinking of running for mayor. And of course she said, well, let me think about it. You know, same thing with the house, you know, my ideals, and she's just looking at me like I've done lost my mind. But then she said, if you want to run, you run. Because I was like, I just want to raise awareness. Never in my mind did I think I was going to win the mayor. So we pretty much self-funded. A couple people did give me donations, but pretty much we self-funded. We spent about $4,500, mostly on yard signs and pamphlets for the door. So what I did was, I went door to door. I loaded up my wagon with pamphlets and stuff. If they wasn't home, they had a door hanger. But I covered over 35 miles in a few months, just walking all over Moncks Corner. I went to every event. You know, I talked to as many people as I could. So election day, I was right there opening the door, thanking people for coming out to vote. You know, of course you can't ask anyone to vote for you and all, but I wanted them to see that I was present. So, election night, we stayed at town hall while they counted the ballots, and it was shocking because I was like 74 up. So then we had to go to voter registration office, and they did all the mail-in and absentees. So we're all sitting in there, you know, huge group of us, and they come back and I won 3 to whatever. So I had 3 more votes. And I looked at the wife and I'm like, I think I won. And then I told her, well, now I'm going to have to learn how to be a mayor.
Berkeley County is experiencing so much growth. Over the next 10 years, what growth do you anticipate for Moncks Corner, and how do you deal with that?
Well, I think for Moncks Corner, a lot of times you'll see something come up in the press. You know, they announce 6,500 homes, and it's the back of Cane Bay behind Wynwood off 17A. And they automatically say Moncks Corner because the Moncks Corner post office services all this area. It's not Moncks Corner, it's Berkeley County. And what people don't understand about growth, and it's something when you get into this job you kind of see, is they made an agreement in the 90s with Next in Cane Bay. And pretty much the county doesn't have a lot of say in that development because they have, you know, the PD for it. Well, that property that's going to have 6,500 units could have had 12,000. The county goes in there and they work with the developer. Can we get some commercial? Can we get some walking trails? Can we get some lakes? So they work together, but the public only sees 6,500 houses, not really realizing it could have been 12,000 apartments. So that's kind of the behind the scenes things that I learned. For Moncks Corner, we're sitting at about 16,000, a little bit more on residents. I think we'll go up probably around 25,000. Berkeley County as a whole is looking at another 100,000 by 2040. So it is growing. You know, we have Volvo, we have the Boeings, you know, the Bosches, the Mercedes, Redwood Materials. So we have all these big plants, and they bring plants to supply them as well. You know, that's a popular place to be right now. You know, we're still affordable in Moncks Corner. You think about West Ashley, it's pretty much built out, right? So people are going to come out more. Our growth corridor is Fox Bank, a little bit down 052. I call this that we're sitting at now Old Moncks Corner. And I think that we have to preserve, because if you go downtown and look at the older buildings and the things on Main Street, you know, we're looking at a downtown redevelopment. But we're trying to do it in a way that it's going to reflect on what we have. It's going to add something to the town. You know, we need our downtown to be vibrant. So if you can bring some commercial with some living on top of it and make it blend into what you have, it's a win-win, because those people are going to walk around, go to the restaurants and the shops and different things, and they're going to spend their money in Moncks Corner. That's one thing I ran on, was let's keep the people in Moncks Corner. Let's offer them things that they can do here, so they don't have to go to the Goose Creeks in North Charleston.
Right.
And then if they get hungry, they go to a local business. or if they want to go shopping at the antique mall or the boutiques, they'll keep their money in Moncks Corner. We're getting ready to finish a $4 million all-inclusive playground. We got $1 million from the state in a grant, but the town really stepped up between ARPA funding and general fund balance. You know, the council and even past councils put money aside little by little, because $4 million when our budget's around 16, it's a big expenditure. But we did it right. One thing I believe in, it's like when we built our house. It was during COVID. Everything went at crazy expensive, wood, windows. And we faced a decision on, do we cut back some of what we wanted? And I said no, because you'll always think about what it should have been. You pay and everything will work its way out. And the same thing with the playground. We run into some bumps, but we stepped up, we got the money. Shade is a big one. If you go to the playground right now and you touch it and the sun's bearing down, it gets hot. Well, all-inclusive is we're going to have special needs kids, and they might not be able to articulate that they're hot until maybe it's too late and they're burned. We stepped up and we put in a shade structures for that park, because it's important that we give the public something that's not only playable, but it's safe for everybody. And then we're going into Lacey Park. We're going to renovate that. We're going to build a whole new playground. We're going to put in 4 tennis courts. And my vision for that is that we're going to start having programs to teach kids tennis. You know, get them another sport. We're famous for our baseball, our softball. It reflects on that with Berkeley High School and their programs. You know, our girls just won state championship in basketball. Our baseball team won a couple years ago. So we get them young and we train them up. And I'd like that to happen with tennis as well. And it gets the kids out the house.
Tell me about growing up and the events in your life that shaped who you are today.
Well, my mom and dad got divorced when I was very young. I mean, they separated when I was like 5. And, you know, my mom was married several times, and she had good stepdads, and she had one that was not a very nice man. He was a coal miner. And so we had to live through some rough patches, and it makes you grow up faster. And, you know, we was kind of independent because my mom worked 3rd shift. And then for a lot of my formative years, my stepdad also worked 3rd shift. So we was left alone. So that meant, you know, at summertime, when they went to work, we went out and played in the streets and roamed around and just had a good time. So it was different. You know, my childhood it wasn't what I gave my kids. You know, it wasn't, and I was so happy that I was able to do something different. You know, sometimes you just have to realize that bad things happen to people sometimes. And you can either dwell in it, or you can just say, okay, it happened, move on, and make something better for yourself. And I always find that people come with not a lot, you know, that scrape by, are usually a little more successful because they don't want to go back to that. You know, I always wanted to have a nice house. You know, I always say I want a car that I have air conditioning in, because we didn't growing up. Right, and right. You know, and nothing against, my mom was a good woman. Her brother got killed in Vietnam, and it changed the dynamic. And I think during that time where she went from a mother of 2, that she wanted to be more free-spirited, almost like the hippie movement of that time, and she just got caught up into something different. You know, she passed away at 58 from cancer. Big smoker, you know, and I hate cigarettes to this day. I mean, I think it's a horrible, it's something that you get and you're addicted to. I remember when her cancer spread, she was blind, she was on oxygen, and she still had to have a cigarette. That's how much of a draw that was. So, you know, I preach to my kids and even my grandkids, don't pick up the cancer stick. You know, it's just bad for you. It's horrible for you. My dad, you know, nothing against him. You know, he got remarried, and and had my brother, and you know, my brother still lives in Lexington, but he's kind of started a new family. You know, he paid on time, he got us, you know, every other weekends, but it wasn't the same as being there, of course. But he's always a good guy. He passed away a few years ago as well, so you know, he reached out one time and said, you know, he was almost wanting to apologize, and I was like, no. I was like, you know, if I've ever needed you, you've been there. That's all I can ask for. I was like, you made decisions to live your life how you let. You don't apologize for that. That's just how you did. I said, I'm good.
Anyone who hangs around you 5 minutes or more can see the amazing passion and energy that you bring to the people around you and everything that you do. What is it that fuels you?
I just think that it's a love of life. And that goes back to when you have and I say a near-death experience. Hopefully I wasn't that close, but it changes your outlook. You know, I like to get up. I don't get 4, maybe 5 hours sleep a day. But just like this morning, I got less than 4 hours sleep. But the energy is, I love coming to do something like this because it might motivate the next generation of people that want to run for office. You know, we need the younger people to get involved, and that's something that our planning commission, we used to not get anybody that wanted to be on planning commission. Well, our last time we had an opening, I went on the growth page and my Facebook page. We had 16 people, a lot of them younger, that put in to be on the planning commission. So that's something I like to use. That's why when I'm in the schools, you know, or at the farmer's market or in Walmart, you know, I was at the Piggly Wiggly one day and a little girl come up and started hugging me, and I look up and her dad's just looking at me like, what in the world is going on? And I was like, where do I know you from? School, or did you come to our event? She goes, no, you come to our school. And I said, I'm the mayor. And he smiled and laughed, and we started talking then. But I'm touching people. You know, I go to the rodeo and I hear, it's the mayor, it's the mayor. They love it. They love to have someone that they can talk to that takes time with them. If a child comes up to me and I'm talking to you, I'm probably going to stop talking to you and get down to their level and talk to them and see how they're doing and stuff, and then catch back up with you, because it's important to me. You know, I'm in a unique position, you know, where I can touch people. I can hopefully motivate people, maybe even inspire some people to want to do better for their community, because this doesn't run by itself. And council has been good, you know, and I want to give a little shout out to David Dennis. He's our mayor pro tem. He's been in there over 20 years. I thought that I would never get much help. He has been the best. He has guided me when I got lost up on the podium. You know, he's been a solid person. He would have made a great mayor for Moncks Corner. I don't know why he never run, but he's solid. And I've experienced that with pretty much all the council. We've had a few bumps, as you will, but you know, overall we're all in it for the same thing, and that's to serve the citizens of the town of Moncks Corner. So what fuels me is just I enjoy what I do, and they always say if you find a job that you enjoy, you'll never work a day in your life.
So the U.S. Gallup poll says that less than 50% of Americans trust elected officials. That's a steep wall to climb. So what do you do to try to engender trust in the people that you serve?
You know, you can call me. I will go to your house. You know, I don't have an office at Town Hall because it's so small. We have people packed in as sardines. Now, we do have a plan to expand it. So let's say you call me and says, I want to meet you. I say, okay, what do you want to meet for lunch? And you'll be like, what? I say, yeah, let's meet for lunch. I'll buy you lunch. And that's kind of what I use some of my mayor money on. So we'll go out to wherever you want. I like going to Waffle House. But we'll go and we'll sit in there and we'll eat and we'll talk, and I'll figure out your problem, and then I'll be able to reach out to whoever's responsible and try to get you some help. So that's one of the ways I do it. Another way I do it is transparency. I put, even when things would be easier, because a lot of people just live their life and they wouldn't know left or right if we didn't tell them. But I don't like that. You know, the Y property in town sold. It's in the county. And I could have just not said nothing, but they're wanting to put townhomes, you know, and we have no control over it. But I want the people to know and understand what's coming. And I try to do that, and I think that goes a long way. Another way is we had a tornado that come through town, you know, and it come right through this area. It tore up the Arby's, and Applebee's got hit. You know, I was called at 4:15 in the morning. I showed up on site because we have homeless that was around that area that time. I come here in a pair of shorts, tennis shoes, and a t-shirt, and I was out there with the rescue squad. I was looking for people. I didn't go to the emergency preparedness center and sit there. I come out with the people. I did interviews out with the people. You know, my whole focus was, is anybody hurt? If they are hurt, let's find them. You know, and I think that goes a long way. And we had the same situation when the flooding come. We had, you know, 22, 23 inches of rain in a short period of time, and our California branch couldn't handle it. I didn't go to the emergency response, you know, at the county office building. I went out to the shelter. You know, Berkeley High School was our normal shelter, and so they was doing something, so we had to open it at the middle school. We got there, they didn't have water, Red Cross wasn't there yet. I got in my car and I went home, and I got whatever snacks we had for the grandkids out and took them to the shelter. I called Logan Faulkner, who is our director of public service, and we always have waters for our guys to work. I'm like, please bring waters. We have nothing here. You know, and then during the day the Red Cross come, and then we was able to get things. You know, I got our police chief was out about, and at Fox Bank it wasn't affected, and he was up there. I was like, is Dunkin' Donuts open? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, well, buy me 6 dozen donuts, and I brought them in and had them for the people. That's, you know, they see that I'm not your mayor, I'm your neighbor, and I'm here with you. And I think that goes a long way with people trusting me. Kind of going back to when they see you out with everybody, I'm not hiding behind an office wall. You know, I'm out in the public. I'm approachable. You know, you can tag me on Facebook. You can send me a message on Facebook. I tell people, if my gate's open, I'm home. Come on in and have a glass of iced tea, and we'll talk in the backyard. So I'm an open book, you know, and I think that goes a long way in gaining people's trust. They know that I'm not in it for the money, because I give my mayor's salaries back. You know, I've been blessed with my job. My wife's been blessed with her job. And it's so cool to be able to give something back. You know, every time I get paid, first of the month, I go give the soup kitchen a check to cover 1 week of their food. And for someone that come up sometimes where we had to miss meals, it's cool. I didn't mean to do that. I went to their grand opening, right, where we got together, and I gave a speech, and I had a check, and I was going to give them a one-time check. And I start listening to the stories, and it's my story. And I'm like, you know, as long as I'm mayor, I'm going to, whatever it is, I'm going to cover 1 week of the food. And that's something that just, I would never be in this position to help like that if I didn't run for mayor. So it's been a blessing for me, and I hope to be a blessing to others. You know, I hope I can help people, you know, and I've got a great track record. I'll find someone complaining on Facebook, and I'll message them. And this happened. I messaged them, I called them, I showed up in their yard within an hour and a half with our public service director and our stormwater supervisor. They had a problem. Within 2 weeks we fixed one part. Within a month we had it all fixed. That's the service that I can give being the mayor, because we're still small enough to where I can touch every aspect of the town. I couldn't do that in any other job. You know, I've had people come up and say, would you consider running for something else? And I'm like, no. I love being the mayor of Moncks Corner. Here's a funny one. Someone wanted to start a petition to make me governor of South Carolina. So I put on the Facebook, I said, well, my wife says I can only be the mayor of Moncks Corner, and they won't move the governor's mansion to Moncks Corner because I'm not going to live in Columbia. I love what I do. I don't want to be nothing else. I'm not having a look at my next step to what I want to be on my next political rung. There's no next political rung for me. I'm going to be mayor. I would love to do another term, but then I got to look at my age. If I do get blessed with another term, I'm 66 when that's done. I'd love to get these younger people involved. Let's get that next leader that wants to be with the people, out with the people, showing up to all the events. I think that you need to have someone that's out, that's visible, that really cares if you have a problem. And I am. I bust my tail to be out there. I lose sleep. I lose vacation time to be at events. I lose family time sometimes to be at events, or we do it as a family. And, you know, I got to give credit to my wife. You know, she's really stepped into the role. I joke around, and when we're together, people will say, well, why'd you run for mayor? I said, well, my wife always wanted to be the first lady of Moncks Corner, and she made me. And she'll be like, Tom, you know, because she is the most non-political person you've ever met. She just, it's not her world, you know, she don't even deal with it. But she's been a good sport. One of the local vendors made her a coffee cup, and it has First Lady of Moncks Corner. But she does the role. She understands that she has a role in it, and she shows up. And she's gracious, and you know, just like with me, she doesn't know anyone that's not her friend, and that helps me a lot. She bakes little bundt cakes. So if your birthday's, and she just did it, so if your birthday was in April, she bakes you a cake, and I hand them out. And she done that all last year, and she's doing it every year I'm mayor. She's going to do that no matter how big the town grows. She's committed to do that, and the people love it. People want her to do that as a side business now, because some things are so good. And when she has leftover, it's almost like the Hunger Games of who's going to get those leftover bundt cakes. So, I mean, I'm grateful. I mean, I think we have the best town. You know, the people care about Moncks Corner. And you see that in their passion when they are fighting growth. They don't want to lose what they have. And that's what's so important to me and our council, is as we grow, that we keep the feel of Moncks Corner, that we don't lose our identity like other towns have.
So in leadership, you're always going to have critics. How do you deal with criticism?
I don't let it bother me. You know, everyone has an opinion, you know, and everyone has a right to opinion. And that's one thing in our world is, and I've had to learn this, you know, I've changed over time. You know, I might not agree with you, but that's your right. You have a right to feel or think whatever you think, you know, and we have to come to a place where we can agree to disagree and still walk away as friends. You know, we shouldn't be, even on Facebook, you shouldn't lose a Facebook friend because of politics or religion or whatever it is. You know, you should have enough respect that, okay, that's what you think. That's not what I think. And if someone criticizes me, one thing I will do is I will try to explain my position. This is why I think this. This is why we do this. You know, the townhomes at Fairlawn, we got a lot of pushback on it. Well, it was in the county. It was zoned properly for townhomes, apartments, and it was originally going to be rentals. So the town went in, talked to them, and it could have been the cheapest vinyl siding or whatever. The town went in, and this was before me, and they got a better product. They got Hardy Plank. They got Edward Drive expanded, which wasn't called for. But the town has got nothing but grief. But they stepped up and they did the right thing. So when we get the criticism, I just explain the process. And some people will understand, and some people just won't. But that's okay. It's going to move forward. It is what it is. You know, so, you know, I don't worry about a critic. You know, I tell them, just like with mayor, you know, if I run again and let's say I didn't win, you know, that's what the people wanted. Am I going to be mad and hurt and all that? You know, I'll probably be a little feelings hurt because I feel like I'm doing a good job. But at the end, my life would be an easier life for me. You know, I'm putting myself out there, you know, time, energy, everything to do this job. And I don't complain because I love doing it. And it's just, you know, it's been a blessing to me. And no matter what happens, you know, I'm going to look at this as something I never dreamed of doing, never thought about doing, but I'm better because I did it. And hopefully when I'm done, the town's better because I did it.
So you've had a very rich life, and this spot here has some special meaning to you, I'm sure. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, we moved here in 1944. My daddy was working at the naval base, and so it was easier for us to, because we lived down in Bazero, so it's kind of isolated. But we lived in this house for about 2 years. And until the war was over.
Oh, wow.
You know, it was World War II then, in the 40s. So we had very primitive plumbing at that time.
What would you say about your son-in-law being mayor?
Well, it's pretty good. You know, we get along good and see eye to eye almost. I agree with all his things that he's doing.
Gotcha. Is there any advice you would offer him?
Take more time for resting. And
if you were offering advice to a young mayor or civic leader, what advice would you give them?
Get out with the people. You know, you've got to know and understand what the people are going through. And that's kind of what I referred to earlier. Everyone has a story. Everyone has something going on. None of us have a perfect life. And sometimes a kind word will help. When I go in and talk to these high school students, I talk about kindness because you don't know what someone's going through. You might be the only positive word that person hears all day. And that can make an impact and a difference to that person's life. You know, it's a cruel, hard world out there. And a lot of things are being thrown, especially at our youth, that they have to deal with, things that we never even knew of growing up. And I think it's important that you set yourself as an example, as a role model. You know, you don't find me out doing anything. You know, it makes me think, should I go here? Should I do this? How will this look? You know, and it makes me understand that what I'm doing reflects on the town. You know, so I try to lead my life as someone could look at me anytime and it's not going to be anything negative. And if you're a young mayor, it's more of what are you in it for? Are you a young mayor because next you want to be a supervisor or a representative? That's fine, but make sure that your town is your priority. You know, don't use it as a stepping stone. That's what's cool about me, is I know I don't want nothing else.